Karen sat at the kitchen table. 2 plates were in front of her. 1 cup of coffee sat there too. It was cold now. She did not touch it. She looked at the clock on the wall. It was late. She looked at the empty chair across from her. She did not move. The house was very quiet. Outside, the sky was turning dark blue. A car passed on the street. It was not his car. Karen looked down at her hands. They were still. She waited. A long time. The clock made a small sound, tick after tick. Karen just sat there, looking at the cold coffee. A small light from the street came through the window and touched the edge of the table. She did not turn on the lamp. She liked the dark a little, tonight. It matched something inside her. She wondered why waiting had become the biggest part of her day. Karen was 38 years old. She worked at a small office near her home. Every morning she woke up at 6. She made coffee for 2 people. She packed a small lunch in a brown paper bag, folded twice at the top, the way she always did. She watered the plant by the window before she left for work. It was a green plant with wide leaves. Michael had given it to her years ago, in their 2nd year of marriage. She still watered it every day, even now. Michael was her husband. He was a quiet man, tall, with tired eyes and rough hands from years of work. He worked at a hardware store in town, selling nails and paint and small tools to neighbors he had known for years. Every Saturday morning, he got in his old blue car and drove to see his mother. Her name was Nancy. Nancy lived alone in a small house on Maple Street, with a garden gate that squeaked and a porch light that stayed on too long. Her husband had died 3 years ago. Since then, Michael visited her almost every week. At first, the visits were short, an hour, maybe 2. Michael would fix something in the house, or bring groceries from the market, or just sit with her for a while on the porch. Karen did not mind. She thought it was kind. She thought it was good for a son to help his mother. She even packed small things for him to bring: a jar of jam, a warm loaf of bread, a card on Nancy's birthday. But, slowly, the visits grew longer. Michael would leave in the morning and not come back until night. Some Saturdays, he stayed even later, until the streetlights had already turned on twice. He would come home tired, quiet, his shoulders low, his shoes still dusty from Nancy's garden path. He did not talk much about what happened at his mother's house. He just sat down in his chair by the door and closed his eyes for a moment before saying anything at all. Karen began to notice small things. Michael folding his mother's laundry on Saturday afternoons, but forgetting his own shirts at home until Sunday night. Michael calling Nancy every evening at exactly 7 o'clock, but forgetting to ask Karen about her day until much later, if at all. Karen sat by the window many nights, a book open on her lap that she was not really reading, watching the street, waiting for his car. She still folded his shirts. She still made 2 cups of coffee every morning, 1 strong, 1 with milk, just the way each of them liked it. She still watered the green plant by the window, turning the pot a little each time so it would grow straight. She still walked to the mailbox at the end of the driveway every evening, checking for letters that rarely came anymore, just to have a reason to stand outside for a moment in the cool air. She still kept his chair at the table pulled in neatly, the way he liked it, even on the nights he did not come home to sit in it. But something in the house had grown quiet, in a way that was not peaceful. It was the quiet of 2 people living side by side, eating at the same table, sleeping in the same bed, but not truly together anymore. It was a silence that sat in the corners of rooms and did not leave, even when the lights were on. A time before all of this, she remembered the first years of their marriage. Sunday mornings, slow and warm, the smell of coffee filling the small kitchen before either of them had even said good morning. Michael making breakfast, burning the toast almost every time, standing at the stove in an old shirt with a hole near the collar. Karen laughing at him from the doorway, still in her nightgown, her hair not yet combed. They would sit at this same table for hours, not saying much, just being close, the sunlight moving slowly across the floor as the morning passed. She remembered one Sunday breakfast clearly. The toast was black on one side, and a little smoke had drifted toward the ceiling. Michael scraped it with a knife over the sink, trying to save it, his tongue between his teeth in concentration. Karen laughed so hard she had to sit down on the floor, her back against the cabinet. Michael laughed too, holding the burnt toast up high, turning it in the light as if it were something to be proud of. They ate it anyway, laughing between bites, jam spread thick to hide the black parts, the morning light warm on the table, warm on both their faces. She remembered a summer drive, years ago, with no destination in mind. No plans, no visits to anyone, just the two of them, windows down, the wind moving through Karen's hair, the radio playing softly, a song neither of them fully knew the words to but sang anyway. They stopped at a small diner by the road, the kind with a bell on the door and a waitress who called everyone honey, and shared a plate of fries between them. Michael held her hand across the table, his thumb moving slowly over her fingers. Nobody called. Nobody needed anything from them. It was just their time, quiet and unhurried, and it belonged only to them. She remembered another Sunday, a holiday afternoon, when they had done nothing at all but sit in the backyard under an old tree, a blanket spread over the grass, a bottle of lemonade between them, warm from the sun. Michael had fallen asleep with his hand still resting on her knee. Karen had watched the clouds move for an hour, not wanting the day to end, not wanting to wake him. She remembered a small Thanksgiving too, just the two of them that first year, before either set of parents lived close enough to visit. Michael had tried to cook a turkey far too large for the two of them, and they had eaten the same leftovers for a week afterward, laughing every time one of them opened the refrigerator. It had not mattered that it was too much food, or too quiet a holiday. It had only mattered that they were together, at this same table, grateful for each other in a simple, unspoken way. At the kitchen table, back then, Michael always sat across from her, never in a hurry to leave. The coffee was warm, and so were his eyes. He would reach across and touch her hand before they finished eating, sometimes for no reason at all, just because she was there. Karen looked at the same table now, the same chair, but the coffee was cold, and the chair was often empty. She missed those mornings. She missed the man who laughed easily, who was not always somewhere else in his mind, even when his body was sitting right there with her. She did not understand when things had changed, only that they had, slowly, without her ever noticing the exact day it started. The visits to Nancy's house grew longer still. Michael began leaving early on Saturdays, sometimes before Karen had even opened her eyes, and coming home well after dark, his headlights sweeping across the ceiling as he pulled into the driveway. Sometimes he stayed at his mother's house on Sunday too, calling to say he would be late, his voice tired over the phone. He said Nancy was getting older. He said she needed him more now. He said it quietly. He never finished the sentence properly. It just trailed off, small and unfinished, every single time. Karen began to feel out of place in her own home. She noticed Michael's coat by the door, always ready for another visit, hanging on the same hook, waiting like she was. She noticed how he checked his phone whenever it rang, his whole body turning toward the sound, hoping it was his mother, needing something, needing to be needed. One evening, Karen washed the dishes harder than she needed to. The plates made loud sounds against the sink, a cup nearly slipping from her wet hands. Michael stood by the door, his coat still on, his keys already in his hand, his eyes not quite meeting hers. "I have to go," he said. "Mom needs help with something." Karen did not turn around. Her hands stayed in the warm water, unmoving. "You always have to go," she said, quietly, not as an accusation, just as a fact she had grown tired of saying. Michael did not answer. He left. The door closed softly behind him, softer than a door should close after words like that. Karen stood at the sink for a long time, the water running over her hands, though she had stopped washing anything. She watched the water go down the drain and did not move until it ran cold. The arguments became more common after that. Small arguments about small things, a forgotten errand, a missed phone call, a coat left on the wrong hook. But underneath them was one large feeling that neither of them said out loud. Karen felt replaced, slowly, one Saturday at a time. Michael felt torn in half, between his wife and his mother, unable to make either one whole, unable to explain a feeling he barely understood himself. One Saturday, Karen waited at the kitchen table long after dark. She made 2 cups of coffee out of old habit, though she knew, deep down, that Michael would not be home for hours. She sat there, watching the coffee grow cold, watching the small curl of steam disappear, watching the empty chair across from her. She thought about calling him. She picked up her phone once and put it down again. She did not call him that night. She let the silence sit between them, thick and heavy, filling the small kitchen, no matter how long she sat with the window open. Later, in bed, Michael came home very late, moving quietly, trying not to wake her. Karen was still awake, lying still, pretending to sleep, listening to him undress in the dark. Michael lay down beside her without a word. Neither of them reached for the other. The space between them in the bed felt wider than it ever had. The next morning, over coffee neither of them finished, Karen finally said what had been sitting in her chest for months. "I feel like I am not your family anymore," she said, her voice low but steady. "I feel like she is your whole world now." Michael looked at her, his eyes tired, his face pale, older somehow than it had looked the week before. "She is my mother," he said. "She has no one else." "And I have no one," Karen said. "I have you, but you are never here." Neither of them knew what to say after that. The kitchen was very quiet, the coffee cold between them, the chair across from Karen, feeling colder than it had ever felt before. Colder than a chair should feel in a warm kitchen in the middle of summer. One night that week, Karen sat alone in front of the television, the sound turned down low, not really watching anything. She heard Michael's voice from the hallway, on the phone with his mother, patient and gentle, In a way, he rarely was with her anymore. She turned the television off and sat in the dark instead, listening to the low sound of his voice through the wall. She did not belong to that conversation. She did not cry. She just sat there, very still, until the voice stopped and the house was quiet again. The next Sunday, Michael left early again, his face tight, his voice short, an argument from the night before still hanging in the air between them. He forgot his old brown coat by the door, the one with a small tear near the pocket that Karen had meant to fix months ago. Karen saw it sitting there after he left, and something in her chest tightened, small and sharp. She stood in the hallway looking at it for a long moment. She did not know why she picked it up. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was something else. Something she could not name. Something that had been building quietly under all the anger for a long time. She decided to bring it to him. She drove to Maple Street slowly, the coat folded on the seat beside her, the radio off, her hands steady on the wheel, though her heart was not. She had not been to Nancy's house in a long time, not since the visits had grown so heavy. It was small, plain, with a garden that Nancy still cared for, though her hands moved slower now than they used to, the flower beds a little less straight than they had once been. Michael was outside, fixing a fence post, when Karen arrived, his sleeves rolled up, sweat on his forehead despite the cool morning. He looked surprised to see her, his hammer pausing mid-swing. Nancy came to the door a moment later, thinner than Karen remembered, her hair fully gray now, her smile still warm despite everything, despite the years, despite the loss she carried quietly every day. "Come inside," Nancy said. "Sit with me a moment." Karen did not plan to stay long, but Nancy asked her to wait while she found something in the kitchen, moving slowly, one hand on the wall for balance, and Karen sat alone in the small living room, the old brown coat still in her hands, the tear near the pocket visible now in the afternoon light. Without thinking much, Karen reached into the coat pocket, looking for tissues, or perhaps just looking for something to do with her hands while she waited. Instead, she found a folded piece of paper, old and soft at the edges, like it had been read many times, the creases nearly worn through in one place. She almost put it back. It was not hers to read, and she knew it. But her fingers had already opened it halfway, and one line near the top caught her eye before she could stop herself, before she could talk herself out of it. It was a letter. Nancy had written it to Michael, years ago, not long after his father died, in handwriting that shook slightly in places. She must have written it late at night, or with tears still on her face. There was no way to know for certain. Karen hesitated, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. She told herself to fold it and put it away, to respect something that was never meant for her eyes. She even began to fold it once, halfway, her fingers pausing at the crease. But something in her did not move. That is not easy to do, walking away from a truth sitting right in your hands. She sat very still, the ticking of a small clock on Nancy's wall the only sound in the room, and then, slowly, carefully, she read the rest. Nancy had written about small things, about Michael fixing her sink one winter without being asked, arriving unannounced with his tools before she had even called, about him calling every night after his father died, just to make sure she was not too alone in the dark house, his voice the only thing keeping the silence from swallowing her whole. She thanked him, simply, without grand words, the way people thank each other when the feeling is too large for fancy language. And then, Near the bottom, one more line. Nancy had written about Karen too. She said Karen was patient and kind, and that she hoped Michael knew how lucky he was to come home to her every night, to a warm kitchen, and a woman who waited without complaint. Karen sat with the letter in her lap for a long moment. She did not move. She did not breathe very deeply. Something in her chest, tight for so many months, began to loosen, slowly. It just let go. She had been angry for so long. Angry at the visits, angry at the tired eyes, angry at the empty chair across her own kitchen table. But sitting there, holding an old letter meant for someone else, Karen understood something she had not let herself see before. Something that had been sitting just beneath her anger the whole time. Michael was not choosing his mother over her. He was simply trying to hold on to someone he was slowly losing, one Saturday at a time, one visit at a time, before it was too late to hold on at all. He was trying to save something that could not be saved forever, no matter how many hours he gave to it. Karen folded the letter carefully, her hands gentle now, careful with the worn paper. She placed it back in the coat pocket, exactly where she had found it, the tear near the pocket still there, still waiting to be fixed. She sat there a moment longer, looking out the small window at Nancy's quiet garden, the flowers a little crooked but still growing, and something in her had already begun to change, quietly, without any noise at all. When Nancy came back into the room, carrying 2 small cups of tea on a tray that shook slightly in her hands, Karen looked at her differently. She saw, perhaps for the first time, not a woman taking her husband away, but a woman simply trying not to be alone in the last years of her life, holding on to her son the same way Karen wanted to be held on to herself. "Would you like to stay for tea?" Nancy asked, setting the tray down carefully on the small table between them. Karen paused, looking at the old woman's hands, still trembling slightly from carrying the tray. Then she nodded. "Yes," she said quietly, "I would like that." The next Saturday, Karen went with Michael to Maple Street. She did not plan the whole day around it, but she packed a small bag with vegetables from her own garden, tomatoes and carrots she had grown herself, and she did not complain when Michael woke early, moving quietly around the room so as not to wake her, though she was already awake, watching him. Nancy was surprised to see her again, but pleased, her whole face brightening in a way that made Karen's chest ache a little. She showed Karen how she made her old chicken soup, the one Michael had loved since he was a boy, measuring nothing, adding things by feel and memory. Karen chopped the vegetables slowly, listening to Nancy talk about small memories, about Michael as a child, sticky-fingered and always underfoot in the kitchen, about the husband she still missed every single day, in ways both large and small. They spent the afternoon in the kitchen together, the smell of soup filling the small house, mixing with the smell of bread baking in the old oven. Michael worked outside in the garden, fixing the gate that squeaked, but he came in often, standing quietly in the doorway, watching the 2 women he loved most in the world, something soft and unguarded in his tired eyes, something Karen had not seen there in a very long time. In the weeks that followed, Karen kept coming. She learned Nancy's recipes, one at a time, writing some of them down on small cards in her own handwriting. She sat beside Nancy sometimes in the evening, holding her hand, while Nancy rested in her chair, saying nothing at all, simply being there, the television murmuring quietly in the background, forgotten by both of them. One afternoon, Nancy grew tired quickly while they cooked, her hand suddenly heavy on the counter, her breathing a little short. Karen helped her to the chair by the window, the same chair Karen had once seen only from a distance, through a door she rarely opened, back when she still felt like a stranger in this house. She placed a blanket over Nancy's knees, tucking it carefully around her, and Nancy reached for her hand, holding it gently, her fingers thin but warm. "Thank you," Nancy said softly, her eyes a little wet, "for coming back." Karen did not answer right away. She simply held the old woman's hand, feeling something settle inside her, something that had been missing for a very long time, something she had not known she was searching for until she found it in this small, quiet room. One Sunday, the three of them shared a simple meal together at Nancy's small table. There was chicken soup, warm bread, and a plate of sliced tomatoes from Karen's garden, arranged carefully by Nancy despite her trembling hands. Nobody rushed. Nobody checked the clock hanging on the wall. They ate slowly, talking about small things, laughing once or twice at old stories Nancy told about Michael as a young boy, clumsy and full of energy, always breaking something, and always sorry for it. After the meal, Michael washed the dishes while Karen sat with Nancy on the small porch, watching the evening light fall over the garden, gold and soft, catching the tops of the flowers. Neither of them said much. They did not need to. The silence between them now was a different kind of silence than the one Karen had grown used to at her own kitchen table. This one felt full, not empty. Another afternoon, Karen and Nancy walked slowly together to the end of the block and back, Nancy's arm resting light on Karen's, stopping twice to rest on a low wall along the way. Nancy pointed out which neighbors had lived there the longest, which trees she had watched grow from nothing. Karen listened, matching her steps to the older woman's slower pace, in no hurry at all to get back. That night, driving home, the windows cracked open to let in the cool evening air. Karen reached over and took Michael's hand from the wheel. He looked at her, surprised, his eyes softer than they had been in a long time, softer than she remembered them being in months. "I love you," Karen said. "I am sorry it took me so long to see." Michael did not answer with words. He simply held her hand tighter, his eyes back on the road, his shoulders lighter than they had been in months. Something he had carried alone for a very long time had finally been shared. The kitchen table looked different now. 2 plates had become 3. Most Sundays, when Nancy came to stay for the evening, her small overnight bag by the door, her slippers left neatly beside Karen's own. The coffee was warm again, poured for 3 cups instead of 2. One strong, one with milk, one with a little honey the way Nancy liked it. Karen still watered the green plant by the window every morning, turning the pot a little each time. She still made coffee before work. But now, some mornings, Nancy sat with them too, telling small stories over breakfast, her hands wrapped around a warm cup, her laugh soft but present, filling a corner of the kitchen that had been empty for so long. Karen thought often about the letter she had found, folded and worn, hidden in an old coat pocket with a tear near the seam. She never told Michael she had read it. Some things did not need to be spoken aloud. She simply carried it with her, quietly, a small lesson learned late, but learned fully. one she was grateful for even though it had cost her many quiet, angry nights to arrive at it. She understood now that her anger had never truly been about Michael's mother. It had been about fear, about feeling forgotten, about a love she thought was slipping away without her permission. But love, she had learned, does not always look the way we expect it to. It is quiet and plain, the way a good tool sits ready in a drawer for years, never asked about, never thanked, until the one day it is needed, and it is simply there. Sometimes love is a tired man driving across town every Saturday, holding on to someone before time takes them away completely. One visit, one phone call, one small kindness at a time. On a quiet evening, months later, Karen sat again at the same kitchen table where this had all begun. The same chair sat across from her, no longer empty, no longer cold. Michael sat there now, his eyes soft, his hand resting near hers on the table. Nancy sat beside them, humming softly to herself as she stirred her tea, the sound small and warm in the quiet kitchen. The coffee was warm, the plates were full. The house did not feel quiet in a heavy way anymore. It felt quiet in a peaceful way, the kind of quiet that settles over a home when everyone inside it is exactly where they want to be, and nowhere else. Outside, the same street sat in the same dark blue evening. A car passed, and this time, it was his car, parked right where it belonged. Maybe there is someone in your life who loves you quietly, without many words. Maybe you have been too tired or too hurt to see it clearly. There is still time to sit at the table together. Karen looked at the two people beside her, at the warm cup between her hands, and for the first time in a long while, the chair across from her did not feel empty at all.